Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
I'm getting ready for a Kash Patel moment. Guys, it is Friday. It is the 27th of February. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. And hello, my friends. Let me just tell you that today is going to be the greatest show that I've ever done. It's going to be the most impactful, the most important, the most fun, the most interesting, the most entertaining, the most intellectually stimulating show that has ever been done at this podcast. And luckily, I'm going to be bringing my buddy Steve Friend on to be part of it. What are we talking about? We're going to be talking about the freaking X-Files. I'm going to make you a promise. Number one, I'm going to scare the living shoot out of you. I'm going to scare you because I didn't sleep well last night. I had a terrible phone call that gave me some of the worst information about this country. And that is absolutely... It is peace stealing. And so in order to make you understand that it's going to be okay, we're going to play a ton of really funny stuff too. And I'm going to try to make Steve Friend laugh. But we're going to give you some biting commentary. How what I'm seeing the news media do is bury the scariest thing that I've ever heard. And I'm not even playing with you right now. And I often get criticized by like three of you that are upset that I don't give an action plan. First of all, I'm not your general. I'm not your boss. I'm not your pastor. And I am not trying to tell you how to live your life, even though I think I probably know how to live an okay life. I'm going to tell you that if you want to know what the action plan is, Seraphin, what do we do about all the things that are bad? It's very, very simple. There are 4 F's. So I've made it quite simple for you to remember them in order. Increase your faith. I'm working on it. It's actually very hard. Work with being close to your family. That's a little bit easier and they're a little bit more proximate. Get active and solve your problems in fitness. We all can be more fit. And lastly, up your handling of firearms so that you can defend those things. That's it. It's 4 F's. It's very simple. They're all within your power. They have nothing to do with hoping or wishing that somebody else will change. You don't ever have to do that. And the 5th is Watch Friendly Friday, which is what we're doing right now. So way to go. You've already checked off the lowest rung of the ladder. We're going to quickly read from my friends over at My Patriot Supply. You can find their website by going to Prepare Like Kyle. For a long time, we've been talking about prepare, do not repair. That's a good piece of advice for you. And actually, the 4 F's are all about preparedness. So if you guys are worried about winter storms taking you out, some sort of rogue storm in Texas where one day you're wearing flip-flops and the next day there's ice all over your cul-de-sac and you've been thinking about using your flamethrower, but you're afraid your neighbors might call, they probably would call, wouldn't they? Yeah, a lot of people lost power. Maybe you guys are aware of that. The best time to prepare for losing power or not having access to food or empty grocery stores is before those things happen. A lot of Americans are looking for off-grid backup power. There are different systems you can use. Some of you guys have wood-burning stoves. Some of you guys have various different types of propane or electric. How about solar? That's renewable in case the entire grid goes down and you can't do anything and you can't even fill it up. You don't even need to because the sun always comes out. I've got a Grid Doctor 3300. I'm not just saying that. It literally sits outside there. My little daughter came in and started pushing buttons on it yesterday and screwed up our whole show for the call-in. It's a great system as a universal power backup, but it also allows you to recharge and keep all of your electric things going. And that means, unlike a gas generator, it can live in your house. It can power things like your refrigerator for medicine. It can power all of your critical safety devices. It may actually just recharge the batteries on your solar or your thermal scope, rather, in case you need to see bad guys coming, or maybe go get yourself some food. PrepareLikeKyle.com. Check out the Grid Doctor, and you're going to get an $800 free pack for preparedness that is going to include 4 weeks of survival food and water filtration and a cook stove. It's this huge, big pack. You guys can scan the QR code that is on the screen right now at PrepareLikeKyle.com. There is a link in the show description. If you see MyPatriotSupply.com/Kyle also works. We often use the same one. So both of those go to the same place. It's the Mount Rushmore of preparedness with a bunch of free gifts. Check them out. Get yourself prepared. Don't find yourself on the wrong end. All of the F's are based on that. Let's get into today's program. Let's start smiling and crying at the same time. Guys, I made like a really terrible meme the other day of the ending of the movie Training Day, where the guy's like, I think I understand like what the streets are all about. Got to manage your smiles and cries. Got to manage the smiles and cries. And he's like, tell me about that, whatever. Anyway, and then like at the end, you've got the crash out where Denzel Washington's character just like falls apart, right? Yeah. So let's bring on I don't know what Steve's going to do, if he's going to smile or cry. Oh, I got to find the button because my daughter moved this stuff around. There it is. Let's bring on the Steve friend. Here we go. Steve friend. Dude, are you wearing your dad's shirt? That shirt looks too big on you. What's happening here?
You know, I keep seeing the changing of the sizes. I've never changed this. I'm a pretty stubborn guy. I've worn a large t-shirt my entire life, and it's not my fault if they are making them larger or smaller. I refuse to change.
Okay, look at this. Hold on. We are not on Rumble. That's cool. And we are not on Locals, even though we should be. So let me actually just fix this while we're sitting here talking. Are you cool with that?
I'm good with that. I can talk about the 4Fs, which I think is...
Lay out your theories on the 4Fs. Let me put you on the screen. Let me go fix this problem. People in the Rumble chat are losing their minds. I didn't do this. Go ahead. Give them some 4F thoughts, Steve.
I like the 4Fs. I think that those are in the appropriate order: faith, family, fitness, firearms. I also think it's pretty appropriate because 4F would mean that you would be unfit for military service. So if you pursue those particular things in that particular order, you would go a pretty long ways at avoiding World War III, or at least not being roped into that. You're not going to be in the slop indulging folks who are getting the neocon war boners from Fox News thinking that we need to go and do those things. I mean, those people probably need to loosen up their MAGA hats so they could get blood flow to other extremities. But I do like 4F. I think that is, again, it's reminiscent of the bullseye theory that you...
Can you do it like Candace Owens and you say reminiscent?
Reminiscent? No, or architecture, or the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
The Bureau, yeah. That's right. All right. I think we should be coming back in. I think Rumble should be coming online shortly. So for the people that are just now watching and you're like, where the hell have you guys been? No, where have you been? Because Rumble is sketchy. Of course, I'm seeing in our chat that people have said that this is why they sold all their Rumble stock. Rumble is not great. It's not a great place to stream to when you view some of the other ones. There's such a better backend.
Even when the Podfather has returned.
Even so.
You know, Adam Curry, I guess, doesn't hold that designation anymore. I guess he got leg dropped by Dan Bongino, former co-deputy director of the FBI, and the title has now moved over. Or he's just adopting and completely co-opting a term that he is no way entitled to.
All right. Steve, can we start with something funny to laugh about?
Always on a Friday.
Do you remember when people would find like some crazy fact, some information, and they'd be like, I've reached the end of the internet?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. This is an Instagram account that I found, and this man is making the argument that we've reached the end of music, which I actually think is probably more plausible than reaching the end of the internet. Okay? And it also actually works into the 4Fs. Like the thing, like, people are always asking, like, well, you're sitting here complaining about all the things that are wrong. Yeah, that's kind of, we're pointing out the problems, and then you figure out the solution is kind of the normal American answer. But this guy actually has come down to, I think, some of the actual answers, so I'm going to play it. We'll reflect on it. We're going to get to the X-Files, people, because we found out yesterday on accident through a Fox News story and a Reuters report that the X-Files are real, and the people who were reporting it didn't even realize what they reported. Scariest shit I've ever seen in my life. Sorry to be flippant with the S word. I'm trying to not do that. Let's start with, we're done with music. It's time to move on to the critical things. Here it comes.
So I was watching the Grammys new artist performances, and I think we did it. I think we've run out of songs and song ideas. We don't need to be making music anymore. It's time to turn our attention to farming. We've already made all the music you can possibly make. I mean, we got white guy, no guitar, black guy with guitar, girls, one of every kind, all pretending to be Korean, pretending to be black. It's done. We've completed music. Now we have to turn our attention to farming and production. There's a lot more innovation to be made in the field of agriculture. Like, we got to put down the Pro Tools and pick up some real tools. Like a Komatsu PC 210 LC11 hydraulic excavator. Singing and dancing in a back alley, that's not an art. 168 horsepower, 52,000 pound operating weight, now that's art. That's engineering. That's how we get ahead. We need less cat's eye and more Komatsu.
What do you think?
I think the fifth F has got to be farming. He nailed it.
It might be a higher up than even firearms handling, although I don't have access to to farming at the moment. But right,
Well, if you are really into like a paleo-esque type of diet, I mean, like a carnivore, I guess firearms would probably be better. But if you're like everybody else in America, agriculture is probably going to rule the day. People just love the carbs so much.
It makes me happy that some people are out there paying attention to this, locking in. There's this guy did another one which said something to the effect that I think this is the story of. Hold on. I think it's the story of what is the best workplace environment and how do you get the best workplace culture. So I'm grabbing this on the fly here. I spent an hour talking to somebody about, okay, here it is. Yeah. So the idea is, and you know this too, there are some workplaces where you really come together and you forge bonds of friendship through violence or at least training for violence. Yeah. I think that's kind of the idea behind a lot of basic training. It's the idea behind some police academies if you end up doing combatives and stuff. What you probably didn't realize.
If you're working in a military law enforcement context, I mean, that's like one of the first questions they ask you is like, hey, are you willing to fight? And will you have my back? Because beyond that, like we can pretty much overcome any sort of other disagreements we have.
Now, the funny thing about it is a lot of people don't realize that's also the same interview they do at Waffle House.
I saw this video of Waffle House employees just beating the shit out of a guy. And I love the workplace camaraderie here. Everyone's got each other's backs. This lady's got a chair. This guy's getting punches in from the back. Even this little guy getting a couple jabs in. Just everyone's doing their part. This is really just peak teamwork here. Tech companies have been trying to achieve this level of camaraderie for decades, and they never have been able to do it. Every company says, we got great office culture, everyone works together, but your product manager is never going to swing a chair at someone for you. Like, if I can't trust you to swing on someone while I'm holding them down, then how can I trust you with my Google Docs? Every company is trying to build office culture all wrong. They're doing shit like, oh, let's go do an escape room. Like, yeah, I'm going to really enjoy escaping from a fake room with people I don't like. That's fucking tight. I think the best way to build office culture is just every once in a while let a drunk asshole into the office, and the only way to get him out is everyone's just got to jump him, just beat the shit out of him. And that's how you build office culture. Like, if you want edit access to my slides, I need to see you bleed for me, because brother, I do the same for you.
This is
the drudgery of filling out those TPS reports in triplicate would be way, way more bearable if every once in a while you got to tune somebody up with a guy in the cubicle next to you.
I love the idea of just let a drunk guy in every once in a while, and then everybody just sees what our unit cohesion looks like, right? And the way that he sold that reminds me of some people that I know. I have a brother that kind of talks like that sometimes. I think he does, at least. Anyway, I wanted to smile because this has been I had such a scary phone call yesterday, Steve. I talked to George Hill.
Oh, then yeah, I'm with you. Terrifying.
Talked to Kurt Zusdak. We shared a couple little bits about it. I kind of covered this yesterday, people. I didn't realize that the X-Files were real. I'm actually going to just jump into that story if that's good, and we'll do that. And then we're actually going to try to laugh a little bit too, because it's so terrifying. Let's see how Fox News covered this. There's nothing more fun for me than finding out that Fox News is going to take maybe the scariest revelation that we've ever had, and they're going to do it in like a really flippant, funny way. I saw Dan Scavino went out today and he tweeted out his Google subpoena, the notification that Google had subpoenaed his records. I have one of those too. If you guys go to my timeline on social media, maybe we'll pull it up. And I also had my stuff subpoenaed, and I worked there at the FBI. Mark Meadows seems like he's making light of the thing. And again, when I keep saying it's the scariest thing I've ever heard of, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being funny. This is not my dry humor, even though there's plenty of that. This is the X-Files are real, the shadow government is real, and everything that I've been trying to claim was not true for a long, long time about the so-called deep state, that there's not a bunch of guys sitting around a table like smoking cigarettes like they were in the X-Files. And I think I might be wrong. What do you, just initial impact of that thought, does that land with you? Where do you think, based on what you heard yesterday?
Well, props to you, first of all, for being able to admit that you were wrong on something. I mean, that seems to be in short supply. If you're a podcasting sensation, somebody who's a far right conservative, then apparently you just have to get your marching orders from elsewhere and just outsource your opinion to whatever the regime and the administration is telling you. So props to you on that. But I think that's pretty terrifying if you've been on the inside and you say, hey, look, There is an administrative state. It's a bureaucracy. It looks a lot more like poor lighting and old carpet and coffee stains than the sleek mahogany and the Wizard of Oz-esque sort of feel that is played up in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But if in fact that's
those were my
happening,
actual words, Steve, that I think you actually quoting me that I said it was poor lighting and a coffee stain on a desk. I think those are actual Kyle Seraphin
it looks
words.
a lot more like Office Space.
It does.
Than anything else.
That's what you'd think. Anyway, all right, so let's do Fox News covering what I think is the scariest thing ever. I'm going to try to adjust the audio in the moment, and here we go.
Here to weigh in is Mark Meadows, former White House Chief of Staff. Mark, is that out of the realm of past possibility that the FBI might have lied about spying on Susie Wiles and Kash Patel?
Well, it's not out of the realm of possibilities, but, you've hit the nail on the head. I can tell you it's the baby steps that we're seeing on this front, where the drip, drip, drip of accountability is starting to come out. But I find it breathtaking that here we are finding that Susie Wiles and Kash Patel were surveilled. But more importantly, we have to put it in the context. This was a person that was working on President Trump's campaign, who is candidate Donald Trump running against Joe Biden. And yet here they are surveilling it. But listen, this is not the first time. We shouldn't be surprised, Laura, because we've had hundreds of people, myself included, that have been surveilled for many, many months over the last several years. Arctic Frost, you've covered that, but those on the left of center media, they don't dare mention it. Thank goodness for Chuck Grassley and Chairman Jim Jordan and their tenaciousness on getting to the bottom of it. But we're just now seeing the tip of the iceberg, I believe.
Thank goodness for Chuck Grassley, I guess. Do you have any thoughts on that?
And Jim Jordan, Jim spelled with the G. I just can't help noticing where we are on the calendar, because it is February 27, 2026, and it's supposed to have been our guys in charge. This is our FBI for over a year now, and this now has leaked out. You're telling me that the most self-centered director in the history of the Bureau, more than J. Edgar Hoover, more than James Comey, who loved himself some James Comey, he never queried his own name until 12 months into the job?
It's actually not his fault in this case, Steve, as I've come to understand over the last couple, probably 30 hours. I'm going to break it down and I'm going to share it with you, and then I'll get your reactions on it too. Right now on the screen, what people are seeing is the notification I got from Google. May 10th, 2025 at 10:23 p.m., no less, on a Saturday. Apparently the statute or the protection, automatically filed ran out, and Google was able to notify me that the legal process has been issued by the Federal Bureau of Investigation compelling the release of information related to your Google account. A court order was previously prohibiting Google from notifying you about the legal process. We are now permitted to disclose the receipt of this legal process to you. The agency reference number is as follows. There's a grand jury indication right there. This was a grand jury subpoena for all my Google records. I imagine they also went out to Twitter, because we had some piece from Twitter on this. So they got Google, they got Twitter. I'm sure they went for any other facilities they could get. Not all of them have a policy of notifying the individual who is being requisitioned. So the same thing that Kash Patel is bitching about, and that Mark Meadows, interestingly enough, is laughing about, which I found very, very off-putting. All of that is stuff that also happened to me. So I am not trying to make it about me in so much as I just going to tell you, I know what that feels like. It shouldn't feel like, it should feel like, hey, they did it to you. You should be burning down the structure that did it. That would be a rational and maybe a logical and maybe a sensible indication. Here's the story from Reuters. You've seen this, Steve?
Yes.
FBI obtained Kash Patel, Susie Wiles phone records during the Biden administration. What are the main things? How many stories of this have you read? There's a couple of different places covering it.
I read the Reuters one, but that's about it.
Okay, what do they hone in on as far as like the most important part of the details here?
Dude, you're going to have to remind me. I read too much yesterday.
Their big deal is that they got toll records.
That's
as far
right.
as I can tell. So here's your summary. We can look at it from the summary. So phone records were collected around the time of the Mar-a-Lago case documents case. Records were labeled prohibited, making them hard to find. They kind of like just brush over that.
They brush over the prohibited thing. Yeah, they don't.
Which is the scariest thing that I've ever heard. And I'm going to get into it in just a second here. And then the investigators got obtained toll records. You want to tell people what toll records are so they understand like what was actually subpoenaed?
You don't get content right? You're not listening live like you would think like a wiretap where you're hearing a conversation between Kyle and me. You would see when I called Kyle and would see what would be tied to my phone number, or when he called me, the ingoing and outgoing records of those connections being made, but you would not have access to the audio or to any sort of like closed captioning transcript of our conversation.
All right, so it's a spreadsheet, and it comes in, and it has like call place from and the time, and maybe a grid coordinate location if you have specifics on that, maybe a tower location identifier or something like that, right?
Yes.
And then you end up with the call received and maybe where that happened or what the reception was, the duration of the call. Is there any? I'm trying to think if there's any other little thing. There's just a couple little places in it.
The type of connection it would be, like if it was a text message rather than an actual call.
Okay, so voice or text or data connection or something like that. So yeah, there's a couple of different fields in these things, but toll records, as you said, are not content. It's not someone eavesdropping on your conversation. So it doesn't make it any better. What it allows you to do, what is the purpose of, I'll just ask you, what is the purpose of getting toll records in that format? What does the FBI use them for investigatively?
You build out a person's network of contacts to see who they're speaking to and who those people potentially are speaking to, so you can get sort of a gauge of what their circle of connections are and how they may or may not fit into a criminal organization, and then expand out the investigation to who all needs to be investigated.
Perfect. Now, point number 2 that was mentioned in this Reuters story, which I think is the worst thing, is that the FBI, I love that they said the FBI discovered the phone records. The FBI had the phone records, so that's really funny. The FBI discovered the phone records in files categorized as quote unquote prohibited, which makes them difficult to discover on the Bureau's computer systems. Patel said he recently ended the FBI's ability to categorize files as quote unquote prohibited. How many prohibited files did you see while you were in the Bureau?
0.
Did you know that there was such a thing as a prohibited file?
No.
When you opened a case, what were your choices in listing the types of files? Like, what can you do in order to either have open access or restricted access to a file when you made a case?
Yeah,
in
you
the Bureau
either make
system?
it open access or restricted. Restricted would be like a need to know sort of thing. It's going to involve a layer of a classification and national security sort of thing. But I worked generally in unclassified space because I was working criminal matters.
So as I recall, and I think there's a way that you can actually do this. You can different cases may be unclassified or classified. So you may have things that are classified where the title of the actual case is secret, no foreign, because of the name of the person or the target that's involved on the national security side. Maybe it's a terrorist organization, maybe it's a nation state actor, maybe it's whatever, some individual who's a spy, something like that. Then they may have code name cases sometimes where you'd have a couple of illogical words. So you might have, a case that's called natural immunity or nature's amenities. I'm just looking at words on the screen up here, or legal, whatever. It doesn't matter. Content photo could be the name of it. So you could have random words, and those can be a code name case. But as I recall, you have the ability to basically open them up as a general case, which means anybody can search for them, anybody can find them, anybody can add to them. For example, if I were working a case in Washington, D.C., and Steve Friend is down in Florida, and I sent him a lead and say, hey, would you go interview this person? Steve would be able to individually serialize, which is upload it to the file. He would be able to serialize his interview to my case because it's open access and there's no restrictions on it, right?
Yes.
Now, there are some that you can do where you might be able to read what I've done. You might be able to find it in a search, but only the people who are part of the access roster are the ones, this is the case managers, the case participants, and maybe the case supervisor is able to actually go in and add something to it. So if Steve actually did the interview, he'd have to send me the 302, and then I would have to serialize it. He might see it, but he can't upload it without my help. Does that sound, I think that's a thing.
Well, and there's also a way that you can upload your contribution to a restricted file, but then you would only be able to view your contribution,
your narrow part,
nobody else's. And that's, I'm thinking about like personnel stuff, like if you're applying for a transfer and 25 people are applying, they don't want you like looking through and seeing who your competition is for that. So you can only see what you've put in on yourself, but you can get an idea of like, oh, there's 24 files in here, so there's 24 other people.
Okay, exactly. So you can see that there is something, but not content, kind of like getting the toll records. You know that something happened, but you don't exactly know what that thing was, but you can get kind of a list of it. Okay, so the reason this is really important is because you'd never heard of a prohibited file. You've never done a prohibited file. I've never done a prohibited file, and I didn't know they existed until yesterday. In fact, when I saw it, I was like, that's not real. I reached out to some buddies, and I said, that's not real. And half of them said yes, including people that were supervisors that handled incredibly sensitive investigations as both intelligence and on the law enforcement side with combined many decades of national security experience. They were like, there's no such thing. And then I reached out to somebody who told me that they did exist, but they were considered sort of legendary. And that if you'd been around the FBI long enough, that you would find out that they were there. Then I called Kurt Suzdak and he said, yeah, not only do they exist, but I've actually had whistleblowers come and give testimonies about them. And it turns out those testimonies, Steve, are things that you and I had refuted very early on. Do you remember us talking about a honeypot operation that was like multiple women that were targeting Donald Trump's campaign, and Jim Comey supposedly went out there and did that?
Yes.
Apparently those were part of prohibited files.
Ah.
And so a prohibited file, people, it's not just, what does they say here? It makes it difficult to search on the Bureau's computer system. It doesn't make it difficult to search. People are making comparisons right now to the file access level, to the same level that you might restrict a Google document for editing. It's very much like that. It's 100% the same. So I can set the level where you can read only, or you can contribute, but you can't delete or change or, share the permissions. So it's admin level access, it's editorial access, or it's view only. That's kind of what normally would happen. In the case of this, it's invisible to all, it's unsearchable, and it's more like the island of the Isla de la Muerta in the Pirates of the Caribbean. The case that is prohibited is a file that is only findable by someone who already knows where to find it.
And that would include the director of the FBI not knowing that it exists and not having access to it at his fingertips.
So now we're going to go through kind of a little discussion about history. And I think it's really important for people to kind of get this idea of like, what are we talking about here? I think what we're talking about in this particular file system is that these are deniable operations. This is the continuity. Like the federal government has a thing called continuity of government. They've got bases that are underground. This is like, almost science fiction type things. But I used to work in Albuquerque. Kirtland Air Force Base has a couple of hollow mountains. Guys, I used to watch trucks drive into the mountains. You can actually find them on satellite where you're like, that's a mountain, but there's like 5 doors in that mountain at the bottom of it. Like, I don't think there's dwarves in there. There's huge, deuce and a half trucks and 5 tons that are driving in there day in and day out all over the place, adding things, taking things away, storing whatever the hell they're doing. I wasn't part of continuity government, so I don't actually know what they had. But we've got things that are underground. We have databases. We've got paper record systems.
Didn't Elon Musk find the retirement documents in a mountain?
Right. All of this stuff kind of like it pops up every once in a while and people go like, oh, crap. Or then you'll see like a documentary of someone driving like a huge semi truck into a freaking mountainside in Colorado or Wyoming. And you're like, oh, that's real. OK. Where the hell was I even going with that?
Continuity of government.
So the continuity of government is so that the United States government, if there were a nuclear attack or like some sort of what do they call it? Designated survivor scenario where you had a decapitation strike where we lost heads of government. There would still be people who go hide and be able to continue on and run the government. And it seems like the FBI actually has kind of a continuity of FBI thing working in the background. And so when I said that, the deep state really just looks like a bunch of people who want to keep their jobs and want to just carry on and do the thing that they want to do and make sure they get their pension and they can retire and protect their agency because their agency is important because that's what pays them, I think I might have been very incomplete. And these prohibited files are this. Here's my working theory, Steve. J. Edgar Hoover founded the FBI, and for all intents and purposes, J. Edgar Hoover was the FBI. It was an extension of the mind and the will of Hoover. Is that more or less what they kind of teach you to when you're there?
Yes. And he did so because he was just ruthless in what he was willing to do with the capabilities of it. And they basically came to the conclusion, we'd rather have him inside the tent peeing out than outside the tent peeing in.
Did you ever visit the Hoover's library at Quantico?
No.
There's an entire library there, and there's a wall of books that were allegedly written by J. Edgar Hoover that were written by FBI agents. Did you know that?
No. The ghost written by FBI agents?
They're ghost written by FBI agents, and they are attributed to Hoover as the author, but they have like different writing styles because they were actual, basically 1811 is doing the job of an 1811, and they were assigned like, hey, you're a decent writer, like write this story for Hoover. And so he published them under his name and got credit for them. And they just got their wages.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the guy was a mastermind at manipulating media and attention. I mean, how many times have, in the last few years, when you've talked to anybody, how many times have people said, oh, I used to watch that show, The FBI, when I was a kid, the show in the 60s. And the closing credits of that show give a special acknowledgement to J. Edgar Hoover. Mm-hmm. He was curating what the popular opinions were of the FBI through television at the time, and they continue to do that every day.
In the same way that you actually had the FBI Academy open up its doors so that people could come do Silence of the Lambs. These are like major PR ops. They've been done for a very long time. Here's the scary part. Hoover created the Bureau. And for all intents and purposes, the way that the FBI functioned was a tentacled outreach. The mind of Hoover extrapolated across a bunch of different working organisms towards the goals of Hoover. And then he died. And that FBI, as Hoover imagined it, continued on, as far as I can tell. But it didn't continue on through the director of the FBI, which is what Hoover's position was, because you couldn't replace somebody with a political appointee and have them come in and be J. Edgar Hoover. What they did is they came in and they installed the number 2, and the deputy director of the FBI has, at least as long as you and I can remember, and certainly long before our lifetime, the deputy director is the FBI continuity program. So here's what I found out about these prohibited files yesterday, which is absolutely terrifying. They are a program of the deputy director. They are the purview of the deputy director, and they are essentially hidden files that only the deputy would basically be able to do approval of, and that means that the director, as they go in front of Congress, has plausible deniability and doesn't have to say anything about it. And theoretically, if the deputy goes in front and has to testify about anything in there, you can just kind of hide behind that, there may or may not be an ongoing investigation in this matter. A lot of these files were apparently paper for a long time, and actually parts of them are. When I was talking to George Hill about it, they used to call it a bigot list. And a bigot list is just a piece of paper with a bunch of names that are read in on the program, and it's almost like a hastily assembled task force. So you bring all these people in from different agencies. We have a crisis situation. They need to have first name access and badge access to this room where we're all going to work. And so they do. And so they call it a bigot listed program. And then when it's done, the program goes away because I just tear up the piece of paper and that's the end of it. And, their clearances to the room are revoked and they get to go back to their agency. So it's a hasty task force. It's not to hide. It's just for the speed of movement that we're going to put a bunch of people together to do stuff. When we're talking about prohibited files, we're talking about their off-books investigations on purpose. And apparently there's something of a legend and or open secret around people that are senior to headquarters. And they don't have a special classification level. They just have if you screw with it, you're going to be done. And Kurt told me he represented people in the whistleblower space that had criminal prosecutions come at them. Oh, wait, didn't I just show what that looks like? I think I did. Where the FBI will investigate you, put you in front of OIG, try to get a criminal charge to stick on you simply because you're jacking with the program that they're attempting to accomplish. The files that they're running are unclear. And the only way they found them, I found out, this is real scary. They had to go line by line. Can you tell people how an FBI case number looks and what it means so that they can kind of get it? Because it's going to be relevant to explaining how you find it.
Yeah, think about it as like a telephone number, right? So the first part of a telephone number is the area code, and then the second part of the number would be like your general region, and then the last one would be like unique to you. So the first part of an FBI case is an alphanumeric. It has letters and numbers, and that would say the type of case it is. Is it an Indian country crimes case specific to a death investigation? Or is it an Indian crimes case specific to a robbery? Or is it a public corruption case that's specific to one sort of thing? So there's a letter and a number. The middle would be the office that has responsibility. So I worked in Jacksonville, JK. If I worked in Chicago, CG. I mean, you kind of learn what those initials are, kind of like state acronyms. And then the last portion of the case number is just a number stream that is basically the case number. If you wanted to query for that specific case in the system, which is called Sentinel, you wouldn't need to type in the first part. You wouldn't need to type in the second part. If you just typed in the numbers for that third part, it would pull up the case.
Right. Okay. So just so people understand, and those numbers are assigned how, Steve?
They're sequential.
They're sequential numbers. So file number 111115 is followed by file number 111116 and 111117. Now, if you were to look at your number, let's say you open up a case and you get 11115, and the next one you open up, it's 11118. Would that concern you?
Either that or somebody simultaneously was opening up two cases in between.
Well, and that happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because we've got 14,000 people.
Sure.
There are people that are opening admin cases. And as far as we can tell, like, I never got sequential case numbers. They might be like roughly in the same category, like they were within a couple hundred or a couple thousand of each other, but they're literally like probably 10 million cases at any given time being tracked there. So we would get these numbers, they'd be non-sequential, but they would be following a sequence. You'd see it be like, you wouldn't open a case and find it was like a smaller number than the previous case.
It's always growing.
It's always growing. Now, if you were to take all those numbers, which nobody can do because you don't have access to all the numbers, but if you could, if you had the access to do that and you were to lay them all out, and then you were to find that there were gaps, that there was no 6 and there was no 9, but you did have a 5 and a 7, an 8 and a 10, you might look at it and go, well, where are these missing numbers? And these are the prohibited files. They're unsearchable. They don't show up with your name. If you were to actually ping off something that should be in there, they're not accessible and they're not visible to everybody unless you have whatever this position is. Now, this goes to the kind of the final piece that I need people to understand, which is that when you open an FBI case, and guys, this is super pedantic and I understand that, the banality of evil is this. It is that evil things can hide when nobody wants to hear the details of it. So when you open an FBI case, you're the FBI case agent. So you're Steve Friend. You open it up as Steve Friend, correct?
Yes.
And you're the case manager, which means you're the case agent. That's your case. You can add some people to it that are going to also help you. Maybe your IA, maybe your SOS.
Yes.
So these are going to be your embed analyst and your analytical types. What are they called?
They could be a co-case agent, or they could be the, now the name escapes me.
Case participants.
Case participants, yep.
So we've got case manager, maybe a co-manager or an additional case manager. Then you have your case participants. These are people that are on the squad that might have some reason to add to it.
And then also approving authorities you could add.
So you have an approving authority. And there's 2 ways you can choose approving authority. I'm your boss. So you can choose me as
your name.
My name.
Or the role that you're filling.
You can have me be supervisor of Steve Friend Squad. So I'm the supervisor of JK1.
Yeah, and that would make sense just for ease, because like if you're out for the day and I need something approved, whoever is filling their chair for you could approve it. I wouldn't necessarily have to wait for you to come back to work to do it.
So we can do it as a name. We can do it as a role. If you have something that is the purview of the deputy director, there are 2 ways that they could do these things. And I have to assume that they're digging through this, and Fox News smiling off Mark Meadows like this scares the crap out of me because it doesn't sound like they get it. They could assign it to the deputy director, which means the new deputy director would have all of these cases under his name, under his role. So he pops in, it's Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino actually has access to all these case files. Or you could save it as the outgoing person's name. You could open it as an approving authority equals Paula Bate. And when Paula Bate leaves, so does the approving authority for this case, as does anybody's access. And as these people retire, they're gone and there is no more. There's no more access to it, because if it can't be shown up unless you have it, my guess is that these things are either in a like some sort of encrypted Word file where you're copying, pasting the hyperlinks to be able to get access to the file, or they've literally written them down by hand somewhere, which is the easiest way to keep them out of a computer system.
So,
or they're not even, all their paper files altogether.
I'm thinking about they're left in some sort of queue without having been approved, but they're there. It would be like you draft an email and don't send it. And it's in your drafts,
classic way of doing a dead drop.
And then everybody has access to that particular email, and they can see what's in the drafts. That's the way you're communicating without actually sending it across the wires.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, this is a classic sort of digital dead drop technique that people would use. So Steve and I both create the same Yahoo, or he keeps the Yahoo account, sends me the password. Now I can open the Yahoo, he can open the Yahoo, rather than send it back and forth where the NSA is going to be able to look into like, oh, there's a transmission of an email from Steve Friend to Kyle Seraphin. Steve writes an email, leaves it in draft form. I go in there and I edit the draft with my answer. And so we have a conversation of edited emails that are never sent. And that's called a digital dead drop. So we're communicating by dropping something for the other person to come find, but we're not transmitting it from one to the other. So you could theoretically run cases like that, where it's just simply in draft all the time and you have access to it, but there's no approving authority. The problem is it would disappear. And if you have cases that are not searchable, that are not accountable, that don't show up in an audit, that don't ever actually technically even exist if somebody were to run, let's say, a discovery. Let's say they were going to run an index on somebody. How many times has Kyle Seraphin appeared in FBI case records? Well, it shows up in my background check. It shows up in every case that I opened. It shows up in any interview that I contributed to somebody else's case. It shows up in an award that was listed for me that somebody sent off to headquarters and got it approved. So there's an admin file that says whatever Seraphin promotions look like. And there's a off-books investigation into me, Susie Wiles, Kash Patel, Dan Scavino. Take your pick. Those are not going to show up. So when it comes down to the time of like, oh, there were toll records that were gathered. Well, where is the file of it and what was in them? Nobody knows, because they were attributed to a file that technically doesn't even exist in the file system. And to have that, and as somebody pointed out to me yesterday who had some knowledge of this, imagine what things are in these files that we have not found. This is the actual definition of basically a shadow government working, which is why I put Cancer Man, my favorite X-Files character, probably everybody's favorite, right? Why that guy is the sort of mascot of today's show, because there's nothing scarier than finding out that there actually may be, in fact, a group of people that are completely unaccountable to anybody. They can do whatever the hell they want, and there's no oversight, and there's no way to find it after the fact. That's not supposed to happen in law enforcement.
And they feel entitled to it because they're kind of following on the prime directive that J. Edgar Hoover laid out for his institution, and that is the politics of the Bureau are whatever is good for the Bureau. So we're going to run cover for however we have to. We're going to go after whoever we have to. And what is in the DROG file that is probably in a prohibited access file on the current director of the FBI right now? And then they're just waiting to drop it.
Here's where it gets really scary. If you have the ability to run off-books operations that are not accountable to anyone, that can't be audited by the next administration that comes in, that can't be looked at and determined whether or not there was legality there or not, and you have to manually go through and audit by laying out every single case that was opened for God knows how many years to go back, and then looking for any single missing number, you would say, well, AI could search that really easily. I mean, you could, theoretically. Number one, that means you have to introduce an AI agent into an enclave that is classified up to and including secret, and the enclave included up to and including top secret. You're going to have to put some AI bot that you wrote. And we know that it takes forever for government to do anything. Apparently, it cost about, I can't remember if it was like $30 or $50 million to create Sentinel. Did you know that?
And they didn't get their money's worth.
No, of course not. But they spent years and years doing something because they wanted a completely proprietary software. What we heard in the story, which I'm going to go back to for 1 second here, we heard in the story that they've removed, Patel said he recently ended the ability to categorize files as prohibited. So they either did what? A code update to Sentinel that we don't think, do you think that there's a way that you could actually remove a capability from Sentinel in an update?
No.
No, I don't
not
either.
My experience, Sentinel is forever.
Yeah, they're always breaking Sentinel, people. It's government computers on like a really, really inefficient, silly software that cost so much more money than it ever should have. And so the scariest thing about this particular article is that Kash Patel could end it, and that's a great idea. In fact, I'll give him praise for doing so. And yet, this is actually the evidence he needs that there should be no FBI as it's currently instituted.
And if you went through and you went line by line, and let's just theoretically say you invented some sort of artificial intelligence that was cost effective and efficient and could find these sorts of things, ultimately it's going to come down to who is doing this. You're going to need to get somebody across the table from you to explain what was going on. And that would be a person who's been participating in these prohibited files for a long enough time, which means that they were trusted to do what was good for the Bureau. You're not going to get them to break ranks.
They're going to be implicating themselves. And so that actually adds to why this kind of stuff and the relevance of the Epstein Transparency Act is going to be really, really critical to this. There's a couple things I want to point out for people that are interested in Epstein stuff, broadly speaking. We did a show on last Friday with George Hill, where I think we fairly conclusively, I think convincingly laid out that we are dealing with an agency that was complicit in Epstein's actions, and likely they co-signed on it. And the reason we did that logical leap, and I don't know if you watched it, Steve, so let me just walk through and you tell me if this makes sense to you. We found out that the Israeli permanent mission to the UN was providing physical and technical surveillance and security to Epstein's apartment in New York City. Okay? Is it a fair logical leap in your assessment to say that if the Israeli physical mission to the UN, which is the equivalent of like a consulate or an embassy type thing, it's a physical presence where they have Israeli soil in U.S. territory, those people are going to have access to, whether they explicitly work for or they're answering to, intelligence people, whether it be Mossad, IDF, take your pick, Shin Bet. Somebody there is also dual-hatted. Is that probably pretty fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we have Israelis working in an intelligence operation in New York City, which we know that they're doing that anyway in other places because there's plenty of cases on this kind of stuff, there's no chance that that guy is not also a likely target for the CIA for any time he travels outside the U.S., and also the FBI because the FBI has to co-sign on a lot of the stuff that goes on domestically with the National Resource Group, which is CIA's domestic thing. And then lastly, there's going to be signals intelligence involved, which is NSA. All that sounds good?
Yes. And then on top of that, that would be shared with Five Eyes partners. So there would be...
MI6 knows about it. Some of the EU countries, France, whatever, New Zealand, all that, Australia. So that tells you, from what we've just found that's publicly available and kind of like dropping the veil a little bit, that we have a person that is at least involved in, if nothing else, as a potential target or an active target of multiple foreign security operations, multiple national security operations from different countries, not all of whom share all the information. And it also tells you the FBI is co-signing off on that. Now, I want you to consider this. In any of the Epstein file leaks that you've seen, or the Epstein file, synopses and articles that have been written up, have you seen a single file that indicated that there was a counterintelligence case on Jeffrey Epstein by the FBI?
I have not. And I've always gone back to something, back to almost like the personnel question about the prohibited files. Who was running those? You need to talk to that person. I thought one of the biggest things that we need to find out from the files dump was the individuals who were doing the investigation. What was their lane? What was their subject matter expertise? Were they a child exploitation agent? Were they a foreign counterintelligence agent? We need to know that, because that would go a long ways to explain the nature of the cases that were being worked against him or he was being investigated for. I haven't seen anything about FCI.
I've seen exactly 2 types of cases that are both out of New York City. So if you guys go look, you'll see the file numbers as Steve described them, kind of the area code phone number thing. You're going to see that they're New York field office cases. So they have NY as the second 2 digits. And the opening piece of it is a criminal indication. One of them is about, underage or whatever child exploitation. And the other one is about sort of like suspicious death on federal property. And I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's essentially, was he murdered or did he die of natural causes or did he commit suicide? So they had a death investigation, which is what Steve and I have done. He's done a lot more than I have, but I've opened death investigations, the thing, especially in prisons if they're federal inmates. And then you have the other one is the child sexploitation one. So those are the only ones. But what I didn't see are any of the indications that we're talking about either global or specific nation, as you call them, foreign counterintelligence investigations. I didn't see a single FCI case that has had files come out. And Mike Johnson even said it in his little thing of why we can't release it. There's national security implications. Well, that wouldn't be the case for a child sex trafficker at all. No. There's no reason, unless you know for a fact that there are, in fact, some co-signed on CI cases. And one of the things that you use there's a couple things. What are you want to talk about, like source recruitment and the sort of things that you can lean on people for, like their instincts that allows you to get them to work for you?
What are their motives? Like, why would they come to work for Uncle Sam and be on Team America? I mean, it could be just straight cash, like financial incentives. You could have a hammer over them. They have been caught red-handed committing a crime. We're going to work towards leniency with the prosecutor's office if you have to do us a favor. They could just be a patriot who just wants to help America. There's could be a woman who's angry at an ex. I mean, there's all these different motivations.
Yeah, so a lot of them come down to the same things, especially if you're going out on a cold recruitment and you don't actually have something over somebody, although having somebody, having a crime on them is great. You've got, it's like sex, it's money and power. Those are the kind of the classic influences that people use. This is what the CIA uses. This is what all of our foreign intel services are going to lean on. And that's what they actually are looking for when they're trying to find out if somebody's an insider threat, it turns out. They're looking at somebody susceptible to cash, money, power. Are they dishonest? Did they cheat on a test? Were they looking to achieve a gain that they couldn't have otherwise achieved? Are they somebody who has been financially dishonest, or they can't handle their finances, so they're in a leveraged position? So they're always making people who have a security clearance do financial disclosures because of all this. And again, the fact that there's none of this information on Epstein is very interesting to me. And when I was talking to George yesterday, he goes, this is not like flipping over a rock, the prohibited files concept. It's not flipping over a rock and finding out that there's some creepy crawlies living under the rock. This is way worse. And I drew the analogy that it's more like flipping up a manhole cover and realizing that there's an underground city that operates completely autonomously from your city and is not answerable to your city and doesn't require it. And in fact, might actually be influencing what happens above ground. That's what this is more like, people.
Just from a operational standpoint, Epstein, there should have been a Type 5 assessment on him right away, just because of his access
That's it.
And we have not seen even that. A type 5 assessment is basically, we want to recruit you to become a source. Where are your motivations? Where can we push in order to incentivize you to come over to Team America? There's nothing in the files that I've seen that relates to a type 5.
This leads me to believe, this is Kyle's speculation and supposition, that there's a pretty decent probability that this kind of a file could have been used to hide a Jeffrey Epstein work. And the reason you would do that, if a deputy director signs off on it, is because the things that are going on are otherwise illegal. Like condoning, a underage minor child in prostitution in order to achieve national security goals. That's pretty freaking filthy. And that should pretty much be off limits to a law enforcement agency. But if you're an intel agency, like, it's all fair game. That wouldn't be a problem necessarily overseas for a lot of our different intel agencies. Even if it had individual issues for the person, institutionally, they don't have an issue with that, especially if there's cultural differences. To be able to sign off and hide something like that, it would go into a prohibited file. And that's what we were speculating against yesterday. And once you open your mind up to the possibility of an unaccountable, unauditable, and essentially burn on read type operation, which is what they're talking about here, your mind can go as wild as you want, and you're not outside of the bounds. Hence my statement. The whole idea of the X-Files is that they were things that the government denies knowledge of, right? I mean, that was literally what the intro was. Government denies knowledge, all these varying accounts. We've got victim accounts. We've got people coming forward and saying certain things. We have a lot of smoke. We've got no fire, and we have no evidence when we're actually legally required now to release all these files, which is what this thing did. And so the answer is that it's actually hidden away. It's not even accessible to the people who are running it. And if you don't know where to look, just like the, Isla de la Muerta in Pirates of the Caribbean, you can sail all over the ocean, but you won't know where it is because you can't find it unless you already know where to have it. You have to have that compass. You have to have the bearings.
And how long has this gone on?
My guess is it's probably gone on since the beginning.
And then you think about everything, and even just, Epstein is the giant story now, but he wasn't always the big story. And we're constantly regaled, particularly during the Biden administration, about all these big cases that were just going nowhere, and where's the cover-up? And then there hasn't been any sort of progress in the year plus that the Trump administration's been there. And they've had Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino, who were supposed to be our guys in there. And you're proffering that perhaps they just weren't able to actually find the things because they weren't at their fingertips.
Here's what I also think is very telling. Apparently there was a known instinct that this was out there, but none of this stuff was even listed or discussed. And we're now starting to see some records of it. People are shocked. They're talking about, it sounds like the attorney may have recorded a phone call without the permission of the client. And I've seen that the attorney has denied that, said that didn't happen, that he would lose his license and would never do that, which also makes a lot of sense. I've got Turley talking about that in 1 second. So all the story is about whether or not Susie Wiles was surreptitiously recorded, and whether or not, they're acting like this was normal legal process, this subpoena thing. And so it was outrageous that a judge would find it. It's outrageous that an FBI agent would ask for it. It's actually a truly logical step. The only thing that's truly outrageous about all of this stuff is that it's hidden in a file that nobody can actually access. And the crazy thing is while Dan Bongino was in that chair, one of the things you and I criticize is that he was never going to be able to be an effective deputy director because he doesn't know bureau culture. How many years did you actively show up to work at the FBI and had a full-time job there?
So 2014 to 2022, 8 years.
Okay, so you have 8 years of experience. I had 6 years of experience showing up at the office. We talked to Phil Kennedy. He had about 15 years of experience. George Hill had 11. And every one of those guys, when I asked them, is there such a thing as a prohibited file? What was the answer?
No.
We've never heard of this. This was unique to a certain group of people that had access to a certain, sort of hallway, walking around and hearing people chat about this thing. And even the people that knew about it, and I talked to some senior 13s, the goal was the assumption was that it was sort of a legendary thing. And the only way that our friend Kurt Suzdak was able to substantiate this thing existed is because he had a client who was in one of these prohibited files doing an operation that has been disputed by the FBI, was defended by Kash Patel as not a honeypot operation, but in reality, all I can tell is apparently this was actually given in sworn testimony under penalty of perjury, and that client was unable to actually substantiate it because there is physically no file to go and back it up. And the FBI doesn't turn it over to OIG or anybody else because no one can freaking see it. And so all of our experience, which, people can point out, oh, you're under a decade. It's like, okay, yeah, Steve, you were like more than a third of the way to retirement. I was a third of the way to retirement. Phil was 2/3 of the way to retirement. He was 3/4 of the way, right?
Yeah.
You can retire at 20 years. A full career in the FBI is 20 years. So if you want to diminish 6, 8, 15 years worth of experience, 11 or 12 years of experience in the space, then that's fine. If it takes 20 years to know what we're talking about, and by the way, the people that do know about it have got about 20 years in, all you're saying is that these files serve the institution of the FBI, a continuation of J. Edgar Hoover. They do not serve an individual director who pops in for a 10-year period, because you could be there 10 years and never hear about it, especially if your deputy is going to keep you in the dark. For your own safety, Steve.
Just this opens up the possibilities of, what about the prohibited file on a Capitol police officer who was walking around D.C. dropping fake pipe bombs that would not come across the radar of the co-deputy director of the FBI, who was depending on a squad of people to put up a brony patsy, and then in good faith took that thing and like, well, that's where all the evidence points. And that pains me to actually have to let them off the hook. But it's possible.
The other crazy things is the congressional liaison, who we know threatened Tom Massey's staff member.
The one who's leaving?
Yeah, Marshall Yates, who's only been there since Patel's been there, is apparently out. Bongino left.
Both of those guys also got the dispensation for a polygraph.
Right. What I kind of am gathering from people that have worked in and around the headquarters building, we can't call it the 7th floor anymore because I don't know what floor of the Reagan building they're doing it, but I guess we call it the 7th floor because that's just what we call it, talking about the senior management of the FBI. Kash Patel does not have control of this agency. This file system is evidence that that is not the case. This should have been a day one priority, and a serious deputy director who had institutional knowledge would know. And now that some of these guys are getting kicked out, I don't know if they'll talk, but I'm not blaming Bongino for not knowing that this existed, because I didn't know, and you didn't know, and Phil didn't know, and other people didn't, George didn't know. So that's important to know, that if you don't have the institutional knowledge, which by the way goes all the way back to what we said in the beginning, you're really, really at a severe disadvantage. If you don't even have a source network of people that are going to tell you about the whisper campaign, hey, this is real. So instead, we're getting this strange sort of like, it's a red herring to be excited about uncovering that the FBI might illegally wiretap someone. That's what I'm seeing. It's like, oh my God, they taped an interview they shouldn't have taped. They taped a conversation they couldn't tape. Would you agree that attorney-client privilege calls regularly get taped? You're just supposed to have a taint team so nobody hears it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Yeah. You get briefed on that when you're participating in a T3, a wiretap, that there are certain privileged conversations that you are not entitled to. So you're sitting there monitoring, and then you get an alert, phone calls coming in, and hello, and then you figure out who they're talking to, because it doesn't say on the computer screen like, oh, this is the preacher calling, oh, this is the doctor calling, this is the wife calling, this is the lawyer calling. You have to ascertain that, and when you realize, oh, this is one of these categories that are privileged conversations that we are not entitled to, I have to turn it off. Then you can do that. But that doesn't mean that audio isn't captured.
It doesn't mean that you didn't hear it either as the person on the taint team. Now, you may not be on the investigation, but you still know that, and you still work in the building of the person that's doing the work, right?
Yes.
So this is the scary piece of it. All those calls you're describing, attorney-client privilege, your sort of like the privilege of the confessional or your pastor, your marital privilege. All these things are privileged conversations. Your doctor-patient confidentiality. These things are theoretically have been honored through a lot of different case laws, saying that you have a right to have privacy there, even if the government is investigating you, unless they can establish that the attorney or the pastor or the spouse are actually actively involved in a conspiracy that you're being investigated for. Then they can go in and they can listen to those calls. But without that, those are supposed to be sacrosanct.
Yeah, and that's why they bastardized that with Donald Trump, with his attorneys in the Atlanta case. They said, well, no, they were actually co-conspirators, so we're going to.
It loops them in, and it makes them. It waives the dispensation for that particular privilege. Here's Turley talking about something, and again, I'm only seeing mainstream media talk about the toll records and how invasive that is, which is actually not that invasive. Like, your phone company has it, so do 1 million people at the phone company. Who they all have access to this kind of stuff. Having worked in telco, I actually know that for a fact. I worked in network engineering a little bit. And then they're talking about this confidentiality. What I do not see is anybody making a huge deal about these files. And the idea of a prohibited file is utterly un-American. Anyway, here's Turley doing his piece.
And with regard to the Wiles phone call, I was floored by this account. If it is true, it does raise very serious ethical questions for that counsel. I've been an attorney for over 30 years. I can't imagine having the FBI listen in on a true attorney-client communication, but to do so without informing my client, there's no circumstance I could imagine where that would be justified or considered ethical. We'll have to learn more details from this, but it raises very serious ethical questions. But it also, again, raises questions about the tactics of Jack Smith and why we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to learn from this. I mean, it's not just that these two cases collapsed, but there's a lot of damage here, and it's some chilling moves by Jack Smith. We need to understand the full extent of that so we never repeat this again.
So he's going in and highlighting something that I don't think is anywhere near what the real issue is. He's talking about, acting like the FBI has not violated attorney-client privilege. We know that they sent sources in to attorney-client privilege meetings for J6ers. As you just said, every single Title III has the potential of being compromised in that way. So it's just based on the ethics of the individual agent to not turn over and tell somebody something that they heard during a taint phone call, and they're not supposed to. But people are human beings. They're flawed. I'm going to come back with a couple other thoughts on that in 1 second here, since I haven't plugged this yet. Folks, if you're listening and you're watching, make sure you guys are giving us a like over on Rumble and on YouTube. We appreciate that. If you're following us on locals, it's KyleSeraphin.com. You could be a paid subscriber or a free member of our community. You can discuss this and other things. There's a lot of different discussions going on there. Always fun. If you haven't subscribed in more than one place, maybe you'll find out that Rumble doesn't work one morning like we did today. Make sure you've got a YouTube option too. So fill those channels up. And then lastly, if you're listening and you haven't done something over with Spotify, every time somebody goes to Spotify, they tell me it's better. The only downside of Spotify is it doesn't run live. So KyleSeraphinShow.com for the replay. If you're listening, you can also watch. We'll add some video to Apple if it becomes an option. And I think it is soon. But anyway, Spotify still kills it right now as far as the best thing. You can hear an ad from Spotify starting right there. And if you guys want, join us over at the Tackleberry Project. It's at I'm Your Tackleberry, all spelled out. And I'm going to start putting some training videos out there. If you want to work on the other two, the fitness and the firearms handling, we'll do some of that stuff real quick. All right, Steve, I'm bringing you back on here. Let's do another video. I'm gonna get fun and just start laughing about this in a minute because this is like it's already kept me up all night, and that's too much. So we'll do jokes. This is Sean Hannity doing coverage of this. This is one of his correspondents giving like really, really serious stories about what's the real problem. Kind of reminds me of the Mark Meadows laughing about it. These guys are missing the point.
Both the FBI and Jack Smith were out of control, becoming a law unto themselves, accountable to nobody, doing what they wanted. And they deployed malicious tactics that took a wrecking ball to people's Fourth Amendment rights. They abused subpoena power to seize call records of more than 400 private citizens and 20 members of Congress, Republicans who were Trump allies, all to spy on Trump. That is an egregious misuse of legal authority, which can absolutely be criminal. It's called deprivation of rights under color of law and conspiracy. But seizing Kash, Patel, and Susie Wiles' phone records is outrageous. Even worse, tapping the telephone call between Wiles and her lawyer deliberately invaded the attorney-client privilege, and it violated the Federal Wiretap Act. Now, I do find it hard to believe, I agree with you, Sean, that the attorney for Wiles would ever consent to it without informing his client because he'd be disbarred for betraying his client. But that doesn't even matter. Regardless, the agents who did the wiretap can and should be charged with criminal conspiracy, as well as Christopher Wray and Jack Smith, assuming they were involved, and I have to think they were.
They always say Chris Wray. You never hear the name Paul Abate. My guess is that's always on purpose. And by the way, Paul Abate went and did his testimony in front of Congress before he left, and he wore exactly what you might think somebody who was a deviant did. He showed up in a black suit with a black tie that was real skinny, and he looked like an old school G-man who was involved in this shadow continuity of FBI stuff. And again, they're focusing on the wrong stuff on Hannity, of course.
Do you think he left a letter in the desk for Dan Bongino to find about the prohibited files? No. Or even at this point, do you think like a Chris Rea has access to it because he got elevated so quickly? And my
guess is no. I'm guessing this is like, that's why they always groom the next guy to come in. Remember, Andy McCabe held that desk. There was a guy named named David Bowditch who seemed like a decent guy, but some people said Bowditch was just like the others. He just hit it better. He was likable because he was big and he looked like a kind of an athlete, and he was kind of a an FBI agent. But at the end of the day, that's not necessarily a good thing. It turns out, if the Bureau still. That instinct to defend the Bureau over all things is really scary as hell to me.
How about the remark that Dan Bongino made, and then we also learned that Kash Patel was being a trash panda looking through burn bags? What are the chances that the secret room that he was shown was a distraction, but there actually are those other rooms that house the paper copies for these prohibited files?
So one of the conversations I had yesterday had to do with this sort of like, people hear it and you don't really know what it means. I think George Hill was explaining to me that he sat down with senior management and they said, there's the files of the operations that we're working, and then there's the operations that are only written down in the safe, which is paper only. A prohibited file, a paper file, that is not the way you have an accountable government that actually thinks that they are meant to serve people or a purpose. And again, I think that this whole story of why we've seen this wild Epstein sort of failure, the rollout of it has been basically obfuscated for a full year, when it was something that Trump's people came in and did. We're kind of speculating that at some point, when Dan Bongino said, "I've been shaken to my core," that was him saying, I've now been told like that the evil here is deeper, and him trying to say that it was about Crossfire Hurricane doesn't ring true to me. He doesn't say it like a man who's been shaken to his core. I think finding out that there is an entire substructure of government that operates with total impunity and doesn't ask for anyone's permission, gets funding, and never has to tell anybody what they did with it, that actually does shake you to your core, because I had that happen yesterday. And it washed over me for hours where I was like, what the freaking hell? What is going on here? And the more you start looking at the implications of it, it's freaking terrifying. Like, there's no other way around it. Like, it's just the worst possibility.
And how come you're willing to talk about it and the Podfather isn't?
Yeah. I won't even put that on him, because who knows? Let me just tell you, it's really bad. We did some comedian stuff earlier. It's bad when a comedian nails it. So I'm going to turn it to a comedian to sum this story up, and then we're going to laugh at a couple things because we need it. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I want your reflection on this. This is Andrew Schultz. He's one of my favorite stand-ups, and he's sitting on a podcast with Charlemagne and says, I think everything he says here is actually accurate and probably worse.
And the reality is, and I don't know, but this is what it seems like. It seems like the U.S. intelligence apparatus, i.e. the CIA, the FBI, was in on it. And in order to out this list, in order to out the blackmail operation, they would be outing themselves for running a child sex ring to incriminate and
hold on. I heard this one. This is a good one.
To incriminate and compromise powerful figures in our country. Bare minimum, the U.S., probably the U.S. and Israel.
So you think this list was used for purposes to keep people in line?
Of course.
The honeypot.
These honeypot traps. But is America ready to acknowledge that with taxpayer dollars, their intelligence community, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, all these things, paid for and ran a child fucking campaign to compromise people with power and influence?
Damn.
What you think of that?
Well, I think the American people have already learned that through taxpayer funds, we stood up organizations and bureaus and agencies that did election malfeasance and went out and tried to purposefully censor people's ability to speak online about Hunter Biden or about the Wuhan flu or a whole bevy of other issues, and we'd all just kind of like absorbed it. That might be a bridge too far, but I've been disappointed so many times in the past about my fellow countrymen that we're so tribal with a personality at this point. If it came out that, but it was that guy and not our guy, the hope that I would have that we would say, okay, it's got to be shattered into 1,000 pieces and scattered to the wind, we wouldn't get it.
I got your guy here. Hold on.
I don't like it.
That is not your guy. Where did your guy go? Hold on. This is your guy.
This is the first time this has ever happened. And we're working out a tremendous financial package for them so they don't work. Who ever heard of this? Usually you work out a financial package to get people working. We're asking people not to work. Social distancing, a new term that's become probably the hottest term there is. So No, I'm very honored by the way the American people are taking this. I mean, it's so serious.
Oh, man. What is he doing with his hands there, Steve? What is that there? You used to call it the pumpkin with somebody.
The pumpkin is Kamala Harris.
Okay.
Her grasp of the information is
circular.
inversely related to the size of the pumpkin.
Okay.
Donald Trump measures shelves, width, length, depth, but he does it and he emphasizes at the wrong point. So he'll say, "We're doing this fantastic thing." They don't really sync up real well.
It's actually a visual. It's an arm pause instead of a verbal stutter or pause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember when we shut down the economy and it was super important that we did that? We're paying people to stay home.
Yeah, we had to stay home, stay safe, shut down your non-essential business that you use to feed your family and pay your mortgage and wait on your STEMI check because there's an upper respiratory infection. I got really fired up about this particular thing, just kind of off topic for a Friday, when I was driving my son to school this week, and he just threw out something about coronavirus. He's like, "Hey, do you remember when?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember." To the point where
all of it,
the light turned green, and he was like, "It's green," and I was just 1,000-yard stare of, I can't believe that billions of people bought that. And one of the big reasons was because they were able to get people uninformed and fearful, and they just went along with what they were told to do.
It's worse than that. And this is the reason why I showed the Donald Trump video. It's because, quote unquote, our guy is there. It's the same reason why we think the FBI can be reformed, because, quote unquote, our guy is there. It's the same reason why people were like, yeah, well, my guy told me to stay home, so I'm going to stay home. Donald Trump said we need to stay home for safety. He's really proud of the hottest word out there right now, which is social distancing, which is a really funny Donald Trump mechanism. Last night, I dropped in on a Twitter space because sometimes I just like to listen to see what people have to say. And when I jumped in, they were immediately mad at me because all I did was say back what they said, which was retarded. It was the most retarded thing I've ever heard, Steve. This is what a woman said. She said, "I'm not in a cult of Donald Trump. And I'm very disappointed that Donald Trump has endorsed people like Tony Gonzalez in Texas because he's a scumbag. And I'm really disappointed that he's endorsed Greg Abbott for governor in Texas because I don't like Greg Abbott. And there's way better choices like Pete Chambers would be a better option." So she said all these things. She said, sometimes, though, I believe, because I'm not in a cult, that Donald Trump endorses people that I don't like so that I'll see who those people are to not like them.
That is on par with our buddy, the Canary, Phil Kennedy, saying, "I muted the word Trump and it made my online timeline just way better." And someone saying that he had more estrogen than Kyle Seraphin. Like, how dare you mute the name of my God King?
The stupidest thing I've ever heard was the reason why Donald Trump endorsed the people I don't like is so that I would recognize that those are people that he didn't want me to actually support because he doesn't like them either. That's why he endorsed them. But the people that I do like that he endorsed, those are real endorsements. And so basically, this is the unfalsifiable premise that my guy is always doing the right thing. And there's a different reason depending on what the answer is that I think. That's, I don't know, it's not cult-like behavior. It's just retarded. And, for people that are fans of Candace Owens and saw this video out where she didn't realize what thunder and lightning were, and my 8-year-old knows what that is, she couldn't find that thing out, and that's somehow, Milo Yiannopoulos said it was charming, which I think is really funny.
Bless your heart.
I think it's kind of like people finding out that the word retarded means slow, and then explaining like, see, it means slow, and the reason people call me retarded is because the things that I come to, my realizations are slow, so it makes sense. It's like, yeah, we all knew that. It's really bad, whether it be the Q people or the 5D chess people or this, there is probably a plan. The plan is just evil as shit. And it's being run by people who look probably something like this guy now that we've gone back into the 90s and decided that, oh, all the things that were being kind of pushed out there, is it predictive programming? Is it just giving us a reason to think that it's fantastical? If there's a thing called a prohibited file, and I'm told on very good information that there is, and the FBI director has said as much in the press, then you have a shadow government of people that are operating unaccountable, which is exactly what Andrew Schultz said. And you cannot say, well, because our guy is in power now, it's all going to be good because they've grabbed control of it. It literally has outlasted everybody before, and it'll outlast them. It is the reason to shut the damn thing down. I love that there's an FBI flag in the background of this picture, by the way.
Well, wasn't it the Rumsfeld, the known knowns, the known unknowns? This is I guess you could argue it's now a known unknown, but prior to this revelation and what you've learned on good authority about these prohibited files, it was an unknown, and you're going to put your trust in somebody who doesn't have any institutional knowledge to root out an unknown and clean things up. That's a retarded proffer.
I'm going to have some fun. We're going to do this because it's the weekend. We're going to enjoy ourselves a little bit with some funny conspiracy type stuff that I found. And there's nothing funnier than people pointing out the deadly serious in a funny way. So I've got that. Steve, you want to tell people about AMRAD real quick? Whatever you guys are going to be doing over the next whatever period of time, tell them where to find you, all that.
American Radicals Podcast. You can always find us on YouTube at AMRADPod, rumble.com/AMRADPod, noontime, all the weekdays. We're talking about some taking ownership today, and that's going to be in the form of the Supreme Court letting the post office off the hook. They said that you can deliberately not deliver the mail, but you have qualified immunity. And then also some health things. One of the F's, fitness, because apparently Ozempic might be working too hard, but it's okay because the New York Times wants you to just stay on the couch and not exercise. So join us noontime today, Rumble and YouTube at AMRADPod.
Legit. Again, I'm going to reiterate, the solution is really simple. It's things that are within your control, and they are not the things that are outside of your control. You can't stop an FBI from doing what it's going to do. Apparently, we can't vote our way into having the right people to fix it because you and I got conned. Like, I was a big proponent. I thought Kash Patel was the guy. And I said in March of last year, I was like, if Dan Bongino goes in there and cleans this up, he did penance. Like, he's good with me. That is not the case. They haven't fixed it, and they're actually telling you that they haven't even reestablished control over this agency in any meaningful way. I don't think they will. So, 4 F's, faith. That's fix your relationship with God. That's the most important. Fix your relationship with your family. That's really important too. It'll bring you a lot more happiness and it'll make you smile. I don't walk away from these things usually sad. I even got to go kiss my kids, sleep last night and hung out with them after we did the call-in show. And I laughed about the fact that my daughter moved all my board settings. So that's pretty good. Your fitness is something you'll never regret, people. Get on the treadmill. Get out there and run like Steve if you're a freak. Get every morning done. Like, make yourself harder to kill, but more important, make yourself live longer and happier and give yourself some endorphins. And then your last little bit is work on those firearm skills. And somewhere in there is probably farming. So we may have to add a 5th one. I'm going to have to figure out where I tier farming because I need to get there. But there are reasons to not be worried about it. It's like you only have a certain amount of things in your control. This stuff scares the crap out of me. Kind of like little videos like this that just make me smile and go like, oh, we're screwed. But also, there's still fun things that happen. Like people making TikToks or Instagrams about scary conspiracies in Las Vegas.
Part of this operation was framing a retired arms dealer for the whole thing. We got 2 rooms in the corner facing the concert. I remember saying, that's at least 500 yards away. They're not going to buy that it all came from here. My partner says,
just leave a sticky note with ballistic calculations on the nightstand.
Well, in total, we brought like 33 ARs, a suitcase full of loaded mags, and a bag of shot brass. I said, this is not enough brass, and those are AK mags. My partner goes,
CNN won't know the difference.
Half an hour before the Saudis start having fun, I get back to the room. Keycard won't work. My partner opens the door from inside, which is a problem because the hotel's computer can tell if the room was open from the inside or the outside. So I say to my partner,
well, now they know there's 2 of us.
Then he leaves another door open, which causes a security guard to come check us out. My partner grabs him at the door, and I shoot him in the leg with a special pellet gun. I say,
if you don't get an antidote for that, your penis will fall off in 3 weeks.
He starts panicking and asks what we want. I tell him,
we need you to appear on the Ellen DeGeneres show in 17 days.
Once the helicopters head back, we get our patsy out. We put a revolver in his hand, wake him up, and say,
the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain.
Bam, cloud of smoke. I look up, and right under us is a smoke alarm. I'm like,
thank goodness that didn't go off.
My partner then scatters all the shot cases everywhere, and I say, this is not nearly enough brass. Only later to find out,
he drops some of it in Patsy's blood pool.
Then finally came the window. We only brought a couple of hammers to bust it open. They bounced right off. I said, this is hurricane glass. We're fucked. My partner says,
we'll just get SWAT to blow it open. They'll be here in an
hour. Reflections?
I think that the Vegas shooting is probably in a prohibited file somewhere. Because the logical leaps that we went through with that one, which actually came out a few years back, that they wanted us to believe that Stephen Paddock engaged in the largest scale mass shooting in the history of the country to that point, because he had a 5-digit amount of gambling losses.
Yeah, and wasn't he like just a prodigious gambler that just did gambling all the time? That was like his thing.
And his dad was on the FBI top 10 list too. That didn't even touch on that video.
So that's good. Let's see here. I got a couple other fun ones. This was a guy asking about why are you a liberal and why do you operate this way? So we can still point fun at some of the funny people that are out there doing silly things. And I think this seems like a Steve friend would have scripted this and then had some beta friend write it up. So here we go.
Why are you left wing? Because my entire ego is constructed on the foundations of a moral superiority complex, which itself is pegged to a pathological hyperreality that, when challenged or questioned, makes me extremely angry and aggressive because it feels like my entire identity is under existential threat. And I developed this mental model as an adolescent in order to make sense of the unfairness of nature. But due to lacking the introspective courage to challenge my own beliefs, it's easier to just pretend to not to understand things than face the terror of realizing that I might have been misled my entire life and could even be rejected by the tribe. So it's kind of like a defense mechanism. I have to pretend to find that term problematic. Oh, right, sorry.
What do you think? Is that it?
Yeah, I think but I could sum it up better. You're unable to answer one question, and that is, are certain people better than others in the affirmative?
Yes. Obviously, some people are. I got into some Twitter hot water because all the Indian people in India are mad that I said that I don't like having a bunch of non-bacon cheeseburger nationalists running for office in Texas, America. And they're like, why? Because we're statistically more educated and we have this and this and we do less crime. And I'm like, no, you just get convicted of less crime, you scammy shits. And also, get out of my country. That's why. Should I go to India and run for office? Are there any Americans that are holding high political office in America that were born in the United States, immigrated to India for some god-awful reason, and then we're like, you know what? I've been here for a few minutes. I think I got a better idea on what's going on. How old's your civilization? Cool. Let me go ahead and put my hand up. Elect me. I'll solve your problems, you dummies. I need it to fit better for me because I'm here now. How about if you have like multiple vowels in a row that don't belong and you shouldn't even be here in the first place because you probably shouldn't have come here and you have no common ethic or value? Maybe shut the hell up and just listen. Maybe ride along until your kids are Christian and then they can run for office in a couple years.
I saw Slumdog Millionaire. That equips me to run for high office in India.
That's exactly it. Okay, we should also sort of giggle about some fun things, like there was a State of the Union, I think, right, this week. And I guess there was some calculus for some of the people that were sitting in the stands for Democrats. They were having a hard time deciding whether to stand or not. Pretty sure I've got this clip ready to go. So let's see what this is.
Wait, if I stand, it'll make the Mexicans mad, but not all Mexicans. What is the racism quotient? Legal Mexicans will be happy, but the illegals will be angry. What's Fetterman doing? Is he standing? I can't have a stroke victim standing while I remain seated. Check in. Am I doing the opposite of what Trump let down my imported voters? I didn't stand for the Russian girl that got stabbed in the neck's mom, so I probably should stand here. I'm so sick of the voices in my head. Hola. At least they're multicultural. White man bad. I heard you.
It's a continuation of, I think it was a Bill Burr comment. He's one of your favorite comics.
I do like Bill Burr. He's super funny.
He said, you should just always offend everybody and say like, yeah, that guy Trump, I hate him so much. I can't believe he's going to make me vote for a woman.
Just hit him with both sides, hit him coming and going, the backhanded compliment.
Get him every single time.
I dig that. All right, let's do some masculinity jokes because those are always fun. I like a good cell phone as much as anybody else. I also dislike the way that this triangle is set up. It's very problematic to me if we have to be in this triangle. And if you're not in the triangle, it sounds like it's even worse. So let's try that.
Welcome to the male delusion triangle. You have money, you are strong, or you are emotionally stable. You can only pick two. If you have money and you're strong, you drift on an hourly basis between suicidal and homicidal. If you are strong and you're emotionally stable, you are a brokey. If you are emotionally stable and you have money, you are a weak bitch. You can only pick two. Where am I, you ask? I am not here. I am in the circle that has nothing. I am a weak bitch. I am a brokey, and I am not emotionally stable. I live right here.
That seems bad.
I think he's going to struggle, but I think that we can hack our way into this again with a Bill Burr, because you can get money and be strong if you accept that the only two acceptable emotions as a man are being mad and fine.
Mad and fine. Mm-hmm. Are you saying you shouldn't cry and be a weak emotional dude?
No. I think that you just say, I'm fine. Why? Are you saying I'm not fine? And then you just go right back to being mad.
Then you can make it about that. Okay, that's fair. So let's end with this thought, Steve. The one way you can avoid having to answer some of the questions is by not getting an earring. Can we agree that an earring is kind of It's not a particularly masculine. Like, is there any super masculine dudes with the earring that you're like, it's not ironic?
No. And then you get into the whole, like, what ear is it in? Is it in the right ear? Because that could be sending signals that you have some sexuality things. Remember that whole thing from the 90s? So you get it in your left ear
right.
because the cops will say that
left
you're straight.
Left is right is wrong. Yeah. I don't think that's real either. You're right. This guy apparently made a bad choice, and he's got some advice for people. So let's just laugh about that.
Hey guys, if you are considering piercing your ears, watch this video first. It's super important. Here are 3 names that bullies and coworkers are going to try to call you, and a couple comebacks that you can have in your pockets. So the first one is that they're going to call you gay, and that's really annoying, especially when you know that you probably aren't. So the thing that you can say to come back after this is like, I'm not gay. This will let them know that you're just not gay. Hey, the second thing that they called me, or are going to call you, is that they're going to just try and be like, you look like a girl. I'm not going to lie, this one is a bummer, guys, because I don't know that there's anything that you can say as a comeback for this. And last but not least, number 3, they're just going to laugh at you and ask why you did that. And you can say, well, Pirates and Michael Jordan pierced their ears, so that's fine. And it was cool when they did it. So at the end of the day, guys, it's going to be okay. And just leave a comment if you know how to undo it or reverse it. Thanks.
Whenever I'm in a bad mood, I just went and I found all this stuff. Yesterday, this is what I had to go grab. Pirates and Michael Jordan did it. Can you overcome that? That's actually pretty good.
No, I mean, look, we could have a shadow government operating with prohibited files of derogatory information about elite pedophile rapists as blackmail material, but we can all just laugh ourselves into oblivion about the guy being gay because he pierced his ears.
I think this is why Instagram actually exists for me. It may be the reason. And so that's really helpful for me. All right, I got one last one. You have a Jewish connection in your family, and I tell people what part of the tribe you are or whatever you... Isn't that what you always tell me, that you're part of the tribe?
I am part of the tribe.
Tell me
My
more.
Grandma and Mom are watching right now.
Okay, so there's a big conversation, and I think a conflation between Zionism and Judaism, and I don't think they're the same thing. And anyway, I try to walk a nuanced road. I really see a lot of weird stuff about people supporting Israel. Mike Huckabee went out, and he said that Fetterman is a great senator because he's been really great about Israel. And I don't know if he's representing us or if he's representing a different country, but can you imagine the American ambassador to like Turkey or Nigeria going out and being like, well, I thought this person in the political opposition party sucked, but then they were so good about Nigeria. And you're going like, what? Bro, super weird. Here's a lighthearted take on some of the strange stuff that comes through my feed. What if we're living in an alternate timeline, Steve, and somebody actually went back and killed the worst person for the Jewish people in the history of Judaism, and it actually made it worse? Are you ready to consider this?
Send it.
Do you know about Hans Sprecher?
Educate me.
Of course you don't.
Oh, what the dude? Where'd you just come from? I'm a time traveler, okay? Be cool. I just got back from the past. I went back and I killed that son of a bitch, Hans Sprecher, right in his crib.
Hans Sprecher?
Yeah. Oh, right, you don't know. Because I killed him. That makes sense. Hans Sprecher was an infamous German dictator in the 1940s. He killed, brace yourself, over 500 Jews.
Oh, no.
You're in shock.
Well,
I know what you're thinking. How could anybody have done such a mindless atrocity? I've asked myself that many times.
No, okay, so there was this guy, right? Different guy.
Don't tell me that somebody stepped into the power vacuum I left behind by killing Hans Sprecher.
You've heard of Adolf Hitler?
Oh, no.
Can you use the time machine again?
It was a one-use only time machine.
That seems short-sighted. You're responsible for this?
No. I just need to think.
You just said that
500 seemed like a lot of Jews.
It's barely any.
Okay, well, everybody always said that if they had a time machine, the first thing they would do is go back and kill Hans Sprecher in its crib. So then we finally got the technology.
You f***ed up big time, dude.
No. Whoa. No. No. Okay, you know what? I'm just a crazy guy in the park.
I don't think you are, though. I think you're time travel for real. Oh, God, I guys got my phone.
That is a bummer when someone runs off with your phone. So there you go.
Always consider the butterfly effect. That's just, Somebody will always fill that power vacuum. And like, look, I mean, the evil and atrocity that is Adolf Hitler, I think he's like the GOAT. But when you look at like, why doesn't Mao get any credit?
Well, because they still like some of his policies.
overshadowed.
Yeah, they're sort of into some of his policies.
That's true.
Terrifyingly enough. You know what? Can I do one more? Do you mind if I pull it? I'm going to rip it right now. I actually sent this to Alex. I sent this to Alex Jones because when I watched it 20 times in a row. And I also cried when I watched it because it was that silly to me. Do you know much about tabs in the military and like operational badges? You kind of have an idea of what they are, right?
Yeah. Like the Ranger tab.
Okay, yeah. So you see certain things, you know certain things about that person. And somebody, I don't know what this interview was with Alex Jones, but they did an interview with Alex, who I'm massively fond of Alex Jones. He's highly entertaining, both on and off air. If you guys don't know that, like, you're lost. And whatever this was that made him say these things, and then they were able to create this visual, which you are going to miss out on. They start scrolling operational badges and getting the Alex Jones reaction to them. That may be the best way to go into the weekend, since 5 people were like, Alex Jones was right, and a bunch of other people were like, Alex Jones is a problem. Okay. I almost want to loop this. It's so silly, but Steve, stand by. This is Alex Jones on the various different sort of badges and operational badges. Here it is. Wait a minute.
Exclusive. Breaking exclusive.
Here we go.
Breaking exclusive.
Patriot, vampire, nationalist, mental retard, eugenicist, a scared man, really, retard, traitor, patriot, vampire, nationalist, mental retard, eugenicist, a scared man, really, retard, traitor, patriot.
Where did the vampire one go? Under what circumstances have you had a conversation with somebody and you were just like, vampire? Ever?
I mean, I'm not privy to his eccentricities like you are. I was also
He's just like that. He's just like that in real life. Like I was talking, he was like, God, let me tell you this thing. And he tells me a thing.
Does he call you up on like 11:30 a.m. on a Wednesday to talk about the vampires?
He'll call me and he'll be in the middle of a thought, which is my absolute favorite. Or he'll leave me a text message that'll be like written, and then I'll write back to him, and then he'll leave me an audible like trailing off while he's doing
consciousness.
Something. Yeah, he's left me some voice messages where he explained what he was doing. He's like, I was sending you that message, and I'm just laying here in my bed because it's been a really long day. I had all this legal stuff going on, I got this other thing going, and then anyway, so I'm just like sitting here, and I got my shoes off, and he just like paints this purple picture, and then the actual message was like, anyway, we're all fucked, and that'll be it. That'll be the entire. It'll be 31 seconds of silly sort of setup, and then it'll be 3 seconds of he could have just typed that in, but he didn't. He left me a voice message. I absolutely love it. He's such a vampire. He's a vampire. He steals my humor. All right, that's all I have for today, Steve. That's what I want to say today.
A perfect Friendly Friday blend of the end of the world and then just 8th grade humor. Love it.
That's pretty much the entirety of my life right now. We're all effed, but also we can work on the 5 Fs, so it's going to be okay. Or not.
Farming is the answer.
Cool. I look forward to people seeing you on the MRED podcast. Thanks for joining me. You're my buddy. Have a great weekend, Steve. Thanks to the audience. Adios to you. I'll just give you the salute there. You're not a mental retard, and you're not a vampire. So, Patriot. I'm going to save that actually so I can play it every once in a while. All right, Steve's out. Folks, thanks for joining us for the program. I appreciate you guys being here for the Friendly Friday. We missed him last week. Again, support the program. Give me a like on Rumble. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe to both channels because you never know when one might not work for God knows what reason. We did fix it. I hope that points out to you a little bit of what's going on in the back end, which is absolutely bizarre, and there's no good answer to it. So that's the end for us today. Have a good one. See you on the other side. Follow the Tackleberry Project, and God bless all of you. That one, we can really say we mean it. Appreciate your listening. Makes this program work. Monday's coming soon.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.